sermon. Luca represents the choir. Hey guys, a little set change today. It was just too nice of a day not to be able to speak to you guys outside. I couldn't help myself, had to come out here. This is my aunt and my uncle's backyard. This is where I've been quarantining. It has been a huge blessing to me just to be able to walk around here. There's lots of colors, lots of beautiful flowers. And so yeah, it's been a great blessing for me just to be able to come out here and enjoy this backyard in this time. Right here, you could actually probably see in the top left hand of your screen, that's my hammock strap. Right here is where I like to hammock. It's kind of been part of my routine, become part of my routine to just come out here in the morning and sling up my hammock and spend that time with the Lord, reading His Word and just talking to Him. So yeah, that happens right here. And I originally had planned on speaking to you guys about something different today. Kind of going along in this sermon series that we're doing right now. The last couple of weeks we've been looking at characters of faith and stories in the Bible of faith and faithfulness. And I had planned on doing that today as well. But right here, right where I kind of spend my time, in my own personal time lately, I've been going through the book of Micah. It's an Old Testament book. Micah was an Old Testament prophet, and just kind of in my own time with the Lord, in my own reading of the Bible, I've been in the book of Micah. And on Monday, I read through this passage in Micah chapter 6 that I really felt strongly that God wanted me to share with you guys. And so I decided to take a break from this series on faithfulness and to just speak with you guys on what's been on my heart lately. A passage that has really been significant to me in my life and in my time with the Lord. And I think it's fitting that I give you that message right here, right in the spot that I kind of spend my time with the Lord, up on my hammock every morning, reading His Word. And so that passage that I want to speak to you guys on is Micah chapter 6, verses 6 through 8. And so to just give you a little context before we read this, before we go into it. The book of Micah, Micah was a prophet, and basically throughout the book of Micah, this prophet, he's telling the Israelite people, basically what you're doing is not okay. There's going to be consequences, but the Lord will save you. And he kind of goes through this three-part thing a couple times through the book of Micah. What you're doing isn't okay. There will be consequences, but the Lord will save you. And so that kind of flows through the book of Micah, and then we find ourselves in chapter 6. And what Micah does is he goes from prophesying and speaking to the Israelite people, and he turns it around, kind of a literary technique, and he speaks as though he is the Israelites. He asks the Lord a series of questions. A series of questions that are, God, what do you require? Lord, what is it that you require? Micah asks these questions to the Lord on behalf of the Israelites. And the response that Micah gives, the response that the Lord gives through Micah is so great. And it has been so fulfilling for me in my own life and in my own personal time with the Lord, and I just couldn't help but share that with you. It shows us through these questions and through this short little passage, it really shows God's beautiful way of often deconstructing and reconstructing us, deconstructing our plans and what we view Him as, what we plan to do, deconstructing those things and building in us His plans and His character and how He sees us and what He wants from us. It's this beautiful deconstructing and reconstructing that the Lord does. And oftentimes that's a process that is uncomfortable. Let's just be honest. A lot of times that process, it can be kind of scary sometimes. But when we lean into that process, when we step out in faith, when we trust God, and we go to the heart at, God, what is it that you require? And we walk in that, it is so fulfilling. And that's what I hope you see today, is stepping out in faith and letting God deconstruct and reconstruct in us his will for our lives, and his plan and what he requires of us is so worth it. It's so fulfilling. So with that being said, let's read this passage. It's Micah chapter 6, verses 6 through 8. It says this: "With what shall I come before the Lord, and bow myself before God on high? Shall I come before him with burnt offerings, with calves a year old? Will the Lord be pleased with thousands of rams, with 10,000 rivers of oil? Shall I give my firstborn for my transgression, the fruit of my body for the sin of my soul?" And then Micah says, "He has told you, O man, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you? But to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with your God." Micah asks these series of questions. What is it that you require, God? And it becomes exceedingly and exceedingly more of value and significance. And then Micah says, no. You know what the Lord requires. The Lord requires for you to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk humbly with him. You know, before I came back to Vacaville, when I was still in Reading, when I was still going to school in Simpson, in my last semester, this is something I've shared with our junior high, something I haven't been able to share with our high school though. So when I was in my last semester at Simpson, I had set up this internship in Memphis, Tennessee, working at St. Jude's Research Hospital. I was going to be working with kids with cancer through the summer, and I had this all planned out. My plan was to spend my summer in Memphis, to come back to Reading in the fall, and then to live in Reading for at least a couple years, because Reading is super cheap to live in, and just kind of pay off student loans over the next couple years. That was my plan. It was a plan that I had made for myself. Right about the time when I was graduating, I had this internship lined up. Right about that time, I believed so strongly, I saw so strongly God closing that door. God spoke to me in that time, right around when I was graduating, about a month before I was supposed to leave for this internship. He spoke to me so clearly, and he said, "Zach, I want you back in Vacaville. Zach, I want you to rest. I want you to prepare your heart, because I have something planned for you." And through my time of prayer and through my time with him, these things became so obvious. Rest, prepare your heart. I have something planned for you. So I called up my contact at Memphis, and I was like, "I'm so sorry. I'm not going to be able to come to the internship this year." And I felt bad, and my contact said, "Oh, that's okay. Don't worry about it. We have a really long wait list. It's totally fine. I wish you the best over the summer." And I was like, "Oh, okay." It was good to see that God had even taken care of that. I had felt bad for a time, because I was like, I had made this commitment, but I felt so strongly the Lord saying this. And so I stepped out in faith, and I called back contact, and she was like, "Don't worry about it. We have lots of people." And so I was like, "Okay, cool." So I'm going to come back to Vacaville. So I come back to Vacaville. I have a peace about it. I'm hearing from the Lord, and I know these things: rest, prepare your heart. I have something planned for you. And over the course of several months, through that summer and into the fall, it was this process of God deconstructing my plans and reconstructing in me his plans. The question, God, what do you require of me? It's a question I asked myself a lot. It's a question I asked him a lot. God, what is it that you want? What is it that you require of me? And I went through this time of God continually saying, Zach, I want you to rest. I want you to prepare your heart. I have something planned for you. In about June, I went up to Redding to kind of scope things out, and I felt very strongly again, God closing that door. And again, saying to me, Zach, rest. Prepare your heart. I have something planned for you. Deconstructing my plans, reconstructing his plans. So again, I stepped out in faith and I said, okay, God, you want me in Vacaville? All right. The next month, I got my resume ready. I was going to start sending it out to churches. I was going to start looking for youth pastor positions elsewhere. And right as I was about to finish that resume, right when it was just about ready, again, I felt God so strongly saying, Zach, rest, prepare your heart. I have something planned for you. And closing that door. And in that time, it was an uncomfortable time. It was an uncomfortable time for me because I was continually asking that question, God, what is it that you require of me? Is it this? Is it Redding? Is it Memphis? Is it somewhere else? And God said, Zach, I want you here. I want you to rest. I want you to prepare your heart. I have something planned. Deconstruct, reconstruct. And over the course of the fall, I took an internship here at Crossroads. That internship turned into a junior high director position. And right when I got the call that this was a position I would be stepping into, God in that moment went, ta-da. Zach, I wanted you to rest. I wanted you to prepare your heart. I had something planned, and here it is. Through those questions I asked him, God, what do you require? He said, Zach, trust me and walk with me. I have something planned for you. And I did. And through that process, he deconstructed my plans, and in me, he reconstructed his plans. Plans that I am very happy to have now. Plans I'm very happy to be in the position that I am now. But they were not my plans, they were the Lord's plans. And as I read this passage out of Micah, I could not help but think back to what he has done in my life over the last year. And I think it's questions that I've asked myself in the past that I've seen fruit from. It's questions I'm asking myself now. And I think it's questions that the church itself is asking in this time of quarantine, in this very unique time in history that we are in. It's a question that the church is asking itself now. God, what do you require of us? And I think now is such an important moment for me to share with you guys. This is what the Lord requires. As the church is asking that question, God, as we adapt to what the new normal is, and what do we do in this time, and how do we do ministry? How do we love people? How do we disciple people? How do we reach people? As the church asks, Lord, what do you require? As the church deconstructs and reconstructs in the Lord, I want to ask you that question as well, as I have asked it myself. God, what is it that you require in my life? And that's what I want to encourage you guys to do. Go to God and say, God, what is it that you require in my life? We see it here. We see He has told you what is good. Verse 8, Micah says he's told you what is good. But what the Lord requires. The Lord requires for us to do justice. And we could go into that and what that means, but basically what that means is to treat others as you'd want to be treated. The Lord requires us to treat others as we would want to be treated. I want to have friends that I can trust. I want friends that love me. I should be a friend that's trustworthy. I should be a loving friend. That's what it means. To love kindness. To have that happen from a place that's in our hearts, not out of obligation, not because we have to, but out of a place in our hearts. I want to love you. I want to treat you as I want to be treated because it comes from my heart. Because I love kindness. It's a place in my heart. And finally, to walk humbly with our God. That's what the Lord requires of us. To walk humbly with Him. And that's a question I want to ask you. Another question I want to ask you. Are you walking humbly with the Lord? Do you know what that means? What does it mean to walk humbly with your God? To put it pretty simply, I mean, imagine you're walking with a friend. Imagine you're walking through a park with a friend and you're conversing. You're sharing that time. You're walking, you're enjoying the flowers, the trees, but that time is spent with that person. The priority in that walk is spent with that person. You're talking, they're talking. You guys are listening to one another. It's the same thing with God. That's what it means to walk with God, to spend time with Him. Our God is relational. Just as I spend time up in this hammock, that right there is walking humbly with my God. It's working on that relationship with Him. That is what it means to walk humbly with your God. To spend time talking to Him. To spend time in His Word learning about Him. I don't want to seem insensitive. I know this is a time where probably a lot of you guys have parents where maybe your parents are out of work. Maybe both your parents are out of work. Maybe your parents are still working, but they have to take on more because other people aren't working. And so they're taking on more work, and that means taking on more stress, and you're feeling that. I don't know, however you are in this moment, kind of in this time that we're in. I don't know where you're at, but wherever you're at, know that the God that wants us to walk humbly with Him is the God of the universe. The God that is in control of everything. The last thing that is asked of the Lord in this passage is, do you want me to give my firstborn son to you? Sacrifice my firstborn son. It says in verse 7. And the Lord says, no, that's not what I require. I require to you to do justice, to love kindness, and to walk with me. But what's crazy is God steps down. Jesus steps into our lives, sacrifices Himself. The Son of God sacrifices Himself to save us. What that shows me about His character is He shows me a lot about His love. Shows me a lot about His compassion for His people. It shows me there's nobody worth following more than Him. He is worth walking with. He is worth trusting. I've seen that here, and I've seen that in my own life. Guys, I love you. I hope this reaches you well, and I can't wait to see you guys soon.